So good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fifth Avenue Synagogue Sunday night programming. We hope everyone is well and safe. And in general, at the synagogue, we're working very hard to try to keep the community engaged and cohesive to the best of our ability as much as possible during this truly unusual time. And tonight we have a unique presentation. We're having a whole a variety of different presenters on different topics, both Judaic and secular topics on Sunday night to keep everyone engaged and to maintain the sense of community within our community. And tonight's topic is the upcoming census. And I was asked, just to mention that, concept of a census is definitely something that's found within the Jewish thought. It appears numerous times in the Parsha, in the Torah, and in the Nevi'im, about how the Jewish people commanded to take a census. This coming Parsha and Pinchas is one of the cases. And Rashi explains that one of the reasons why a census is important, at least from a Jewish perspective, is because it demonstrates the idea that every single person is valued and every single person is loved by Hashem. It's not, we don't round off. Every single person is significant. And Ramban says that when Moses conducted the census, there was opportunity for him to have a personal dialogue, personal interaction with each person, that he should know who they are. So it's basically the idea of giving significance and recognition to each individual. So a census is most definitely a Jewish value. And to present our speaker tonight, Sam Milstein, is our very dear friend Usher Milstein, a member of Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and the man and him and his wife, Michelle, have helped our community, dear friends of our community in so many ways. I'm sure everyone has seen the beautiful new library that we have, one of the nicest libraries in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, in Judaic libraries, very much due to their influence. And they're very involved in so many projects behind in the shuls. And each and every time it's based on their own initiative, based on their own interests, reaching out to the community and to offer, which, as we all know, is the highest level of charity, is not to wait to be asked, but actually to initiate and to give. So we want to thank them for all they've done for our community, thank them for arranging tonight's program, and also wish them a official mazel tov online. They are blessed with a beautiful baby girl, Naomi, a few months ago. Don't be shocked if you hear an interruption during the presentation. It could be that she's calling for her daddy's attention. So if everyone can please give your attention to Usher Milstein, who will introduce this evening's speaker.
Thank you, Rabbi Babbage. So I wanted to introduce my cousin Sam. He's my father's youngest brother's son, so that's how we're related. That's how we're cousins, and that's why he has the same last name. So I've been helping out my cousin Sam with various communities and various synagogues to go and help the Jewish vote get counted, because it's very important. In addition, the Upper East Side as a whole, in addition to the Jewish community, as my cousin Sam will explain to you later, is very undercounted. I think people think it's privacy and what they fill out goes into the public database. He'll explain to you about, it's more for statistics. My cousin Sam lives in Manhattan. He's been very involved with this. He's been very involved from the Jewish level and the Yiddish level. And it's very important. And I would like him to take over and explain in detail.
Did he freeze? I think it's my cue to start if he's frozen.
As the Jewish people being counted the American census.
Thank you, Asher. Really appreciate it. So I'll get started now. My name is Sam Milstein, and I'm the Yiddish-speaking partnership specialist for the United States Census Bureau. What does that mean? So since June, July of last year, I've been responsible with partnering with Jewish organizations and Yiddish-speaking organizations, communal organizations, charities, you name it, to encourage the community to participate in the census. So what is the Census Bureau? We're the largest statistical organization. We don't just conduct the census. It's a little bit of a misnomer. We actually conduct 130 surveys over a 10-year period, and we cycle through them 10 years. You can see here, for example, the economic census, which is for businesses. We send them to business owners. We do that in every year, ending in 2 and 7. So 2002, 2007, 2022, 2027. Census of governments is like the name suggests for government. The housing survey is the one that asks how many bathrooms you have in your home. Do you rent? Do you own? Do you have a mortgage? So these are the things that we ask during the entire 10-year period. So we're very busy working all the time. We don't just stay dormant for 10 years and pop up right before the decennial. We're always working and we're always conducting statistics for the benefit of the nation. So survey awareness, this is just so you know, if this is a little bit of a timeline. Everything has changed now because of Corona, but this presentation is static. We cannot change it. It has to be changed from headquarters, but just to know that our census employees, they're going out, they have phones like us, like this. You can't see it because of the background. They have IDs like this, and I can send a link. You can't see that either. It's okay. But if you even have if you you suspect that the person knocking on your door is not a census employee, you can call the number that you see it on screen. You can go to our website. But our goal is, and my goal as a partnership specialist, is that no one should have to come to your door to take the census. That you should know to do it. When you already received 4 mailings, and if you haven't done it yet, I posted a link in the script in the chat box. And this will mitigate a census employee, a censuznik as it's called in Yiddish, from coming to your door, knocking on your door, and going with an iPad or an iPhone and asking you questions. You don't want to have that doubt that maybe this person isn't really a census employee. Fill it out when you can, as you can. So our mission is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. We've been doing the census since 1790. It's in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, so it's a dina de malchut din. You have to do it. Technically, we have fined people for refusing to take the census, but the last time that was done was 1970. But again, these are unprecedented times, as they say, so there is a possibility that they can go back. We can go back to doing that if we are not getting the numbers that we're getting. Historically, we've never had an undercount. Even though some communities are undercounted nationwide, there's always been decade over decade, more Americans, more residents of the United States being counted. So your information is protected under Title 13. As a census employee, I'm a sworn representative of the U.S. government. We cannot share your data. We can go to jail for 5 years, or we can get a $100,000 fine. Excuse me, $250,000 fine. So I don't have $250,000. I don't want to pay that fine. We will never share your data. Many people recall that the Japanese were rounded up after World War II. During World War II, that was based on census data. That was why Title 13 was created. So such a situation can never happen again. Your data, your personal data on the individual level will never be shared. By tract, it would be shared, but on an individual level, it will not be shared. Not with the IRS, not with immigration, not with anybody. So that's an absolute fact. That will not change. Your information is safe. Why do we take the census? It's important for 2 reasons. So representation in the House of Representatives, each congressional seat, the electoral college numbers are also determined by the census, by population, and 675, you can see it's bold here, $675 billion in federal funding is based solely on the census. So when the Department of Homeland Security is looking where do they want to allocate security funding, and they see, okay, this is where the Jews live, the Jewish community institutions need security funding. I know from doing this job, I'm sure all of you know, no private institution wants to have to pay for private security. They want the government, the government should fund security. We need more security than other nations. So this is a big reason for Jews, especially in this past year. We had the shooting in Jersey City. We had a Shtechara in Muncie. So it's very important that for that reason alone, I believe that the Jewish community should really be participating in the census. And beyond that, WIC Section 8. We don't think about this, but I saw statistics somewhere that, from the Met Council, up to 40% of the Jews in tri-state area rely on some form of government assistance. How large, I can't say, or how much, but something or other, people are relying on it, and it's very important that at least our community, I can't speak for the entire population, but at least our community is doing their part to be counted. Safe and easy, we spoke about this already. We use differential privacy. That's not so interesting. Microsoft is doing our security. You don't have to worry about your information being stolen. You can respond Right now, only 2 ways. It used to be 3 ways. 4 ways if you count an employee coming to your door, which you don't want, online and by phone. Again, the information is in the chat box. You can do it during this presentation. It's 10 minutes. It determines your future for the next 10 years. Very important. This is the information we're asking. We will never ask for donation, social security number, political party. You would think that would be a given, but some people really don't know. So we have to tell people that. Language support, this is a big one. This is the first time the census is being supported in more than 40 languages. We have the 12 main languages cover 9% of the population. And you can see here, we have, 59, so including English, it's 60 languages that have not support on the phone or on the internet, but we have additional materials in those languages. We have a booklet, a guide, an 8-page guide in all of these additional languages. You can see that we have Yiddish and Hebrew. So that's a big win. It's a big plus. We have it. It's there. If you need it, you can use it. This timeline is no longer the case. Originally, the census was supposed to conclude in the middle of July. It's already July 5th. With Corona, we're going much further than we were before. The census will now end mid-October, October 15th, October 16th. Our enumerators are going to start going out at the end of this month, starting in August. They're going to go out through October to collect information. We also have a program called MQA, Mobile Questionnaire Assistance. We'll get to that later. It's part of the presentation, but we have other initiatives going on besides presentations at this stage to get people involved, to get people to complete the census. So hiring, we can speak about later. These milestones don't apply anymore. This is not important. So this is called Rome. This is a map it was a map that we developed that would show individual census tract. This you're looking here is New Square. And you can see that the blue means that there's a significant chance based on our estimates. The estimates are collected from data from our other surveys that this population will not respond by themselves to the census. So they will have a low self-response rate. Obviously now with Corona, everything's been turned on its head. The populations that we thought would be the most inclined to respond on their own have not responded. So this is our challenge right now to count those populations. We have data. If you go to the website, if you go to Rome, I don't recommend at this stage because it's not up to date. We have another map that has that information. We have a data dissemination program. So if you want data for your business, for your community, demographic information, religious information, certain metrics we can provide for free that your business, your institution, your charitable organization can use to help target the demographics that you want. Economic, social, ethnic, we have them. So we're on Twitter, we're online. So that's basically the census. But what I really want to speak about, and I'm going to switch screens here just a moment, is the work that I've been doing with the Jewish community, with the Yiddish speaking community. I think that's, it's something that would be interesting for all of you. I'm just looking for the census. Excuse me, I have the presentation pulled up here. Just a moment, here it is. On a new share. Okay. So the first slide we have here, this is a comic from a newspaper, Yiddish newspaper, 1910. And the comic, it shows the censusnik is going door to door and he's asking, I'll read, if you don't speak Yiddish, I'll read it for you. Mon the klutz kashes was the census man frag. So strange klutz questions, stupid questions that the census man asks. I'm not going to go through it panel by panel, but you can see the last panel. The census man is asking, it's a man, how many children do you have? And he's holding 6, 7, 8, 9 children. And so even today, it's the same situation. They're going to ask stupid questions. They're going to ask you to your face, are you a man or you're a woman? We don't need this, that we don't have to have this today. But I just thought it was remarkable that, the Jewish community, we've been talking about this for over 150, 180 years since we've been here. It's been something we've been doing. So I really like this. Moving on. Okay, so I work with a lot of politicians. One of the first politicians I worked with was Simcha Eichenstein. He's the assemblyman for Borough Park. We had a meeting with all these shareholders, all these groups representing Borough Park. You can see in the background, we have a map. You can see me there. There's a chassid taking a picture while I'm in the meeting. But we have a map here. Borough Park was one of the worst response rates in 2010. What happened? April 1st was Pesach. Not even Chol HaMoed Pesach, it was Davka Pesach. So 2010, when we had the official census day, the community wasn't there. So their self-response rate, 49%. It wasn't just the worst in New York, it was one of the worst in the country for the population. So we still have to make an effort to get Borough Park counted. You can see we have different shareholders, politicians, different Square, Bubba, Vision, everyone's in this meeting. It's important, we did this very early. Why? Because New York City had a grant to give to organizations to do census outreach. So Simcha Eichhorn made a video. These are very helpful. You'll see later, Aguda also made a video. We don't have to watch the video. Aguda was a huge partner. Asher, I have to thank also for getting me an in with the Aguda. The Aguda we worked with since Thanksgiving. They had a huge convention. But what was the problem for the Aguda and doing census material? So all of our material, it's not just the Aguda, it's across the board with Yeshivish, Litvish, Hasidic, it doesn't matter. You can't have pictures of women on your documentation. And the census material, it's so broad, even I can't, you can't see it. But everything has a picture of a woman in a hijab. I had to go to my first meeting, my first presentation. My supervisor was a Malaysian woman in a hijab. I had to bring her to a presentation with Hasidic individuals. It's not it doesn't work. They don't have this kind of seichel, this chush to say this is okay, this is not okay. So they're relying on me, on the other Jewish speaking staff, Jewish staff to set them straight. So the Aguda, they had their this flyer made. They actually had it made. It was at Siyam Hashas. They had a problem. There were women, these little silhouette people here. There were women there. They couldn't have it. So the day before, they had to scrap everything and print it again. And it was left on me. The onus was on me to scramble to distribute and disseminate Motzi Shabbos at their convention. We got, if you can see here, so the picture is Yerucham Silber and Yerucham Silber is the head of government relations, and Saul Werdiger from the Aguda. They're holding the flyer, but you can see here their placard from the convention, $1 billion in federal funding went to these programs. So this is something that they tout that the Aguda does. It's part of their mission. They have a special interest. They also receive money from the Complete Count Committee to do census outreach. And they actually have a website here. I don't know. They made, do you see this webpage or no? I'll share again. I might have to do a separate share. Okay. So they made a website. They had all these organizations, the head of these organizations, make a PSA for their communities, and they're hosting on their website. You have Hatzolah, Shomrim, Misameach, Hamodim. So it's really great to have these organizations come forward and make an announcement. And hopefully it's something that Fifth Avenue Synagogue could also do to share with their members to take the census. It's a very beautiful thing that they did. They answer questions specific to the Jewish community, which the Census Bureau does not do. They have advertising dollars for every community you could think of except the Jews, because we're not considered we're considered a faith-based community and not an ethnic community. So where the Blacks and the Pacific Islanders and the Indians have their own census paid for ads and materials, we do not. So back to the presentation. How am I doing for time? I'm just going to do this.
You're fine on time.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to switch back to this presentation. Let's see if I can find it again.
When the person responds on the census, is there a place that they should write that they're Jewish? And
so yes, question 9 of the enquete of the survey asks you first you put your race. Your race could be, I like to say I'm Dutch Sephardic, I'm Hispanic, I put Hispanic. It doesn't make a difference. It's just for statistical purposes. But you can put your ethnicity, you can specify as Jewish. There's a second box where you fill it in yourself. So some people put Ashkenaz, Sephardic, but the worst thing I see is people said, oh, well, my grandparents came from Russia, I'm gonna put Russian. So that's like a disaster, because then they think you're ethnically Russian, that they need Russian language services for that area. That's not what we want. We want Yiddish and maybe even Hebrew language services, we wanna be able to buy train tickets in Yiddish, you wanna have PSAs, wash your hands in Yiddish. How do we get that? By putting that we're Jewish on the, I'm serious. It really makes a difference. So Siyam Hashas, as you know, took place in Barclays and it took place in MetLife Stadium. So this is our two of our recruiting assistants, both Yiddish speakers, Chaim Ovitz and David Ball, who were on New Year's Day, mind you, when everyone's on holiday. they went out of their way. They were at Barclays Center just while I was at MetLife Stadium distributing material. We were on the big screen at MetLife Stadium. The staff at MetLife Stadium, I'm not sure if any of you went to see Shas, but they had in the goodie bag our flyer. This flyer they had with all the other stuff that you got at your CMA Shas. So that was a huge win. More Jews were at that in 7 years than any other event. And we had the most exposure. And when we were in Williamsburg, when we go to Borough Park, they said, yeah, some Shagets handed me a flyer at CMA Shas, take the census. So it was really remarkable that the Aguda let us do this, that the MetLife staff who, were contracted by Aguda agreed to do this. They didn't have to do this. They did this for us as a favor. They recognize the significance of this mission. So it's very important. This is Assemblyman Daniel Rosenthal. He covers parts of Queens where the Bukharian community lives. I was put in touch with him through the Aguda. We met at the convention. He's been a huge partner. Everyone, Simcha Felder, Simcha Eichenstein, Kalman Yeager, any Jewish politician, be it councilman, assemblyman, state senator, they've been doing census outreach. It's important to them. They want to make sure the Jewish community is counted. So it's to illustrate. So hiring, we've hit one of the main challenges that we've had with the Jewish community, with the Yiddish speaking community, is hiring census takers. We needed about, we'll say 200. It's been changing, but we needed 200 Yiddish speaking census takers to work for us with the Census Bureau. It's been very difficult, even today, to get those workers. You would think people need jobs. They don't want to knock on doors. For some, it's a SNES issue. For others, they think it's beneath them to knock on doors. It's a Morris Eye issue. They don't want other from Yidden to see them carrying an iPad. So we've been having a lot of trouble getting workers. The Borough Park JCC was a big help. They have a workforce, which is under the auspices of the Coney Island JCC, and JCC means Jewish Community Council. They receive money from other organizations to help with hiring, to help with aid with social services. So they were a big help in getting people to sign up. But once we signed up, had people sign up, we have 2 events here. One is from KJ, Kiryas Joel, another one from Muncie. It's been very difficult. Even like they would call people on Shabbos or Friday night saying, come in for your fingerprinting. The person wouldn't answer the phone Shabbos, and they move on to the other applicant. So it's been very challenging for us to get these people to get involved. Excuse me. So that's why we want to avoid having to have a situation where we get to the enumerator knocking on the door. So I want to take this opportunity before we move on to go to the HTC map. This is a map that was created by CUNY using our data. We have our own map. I don't recommend, it's very difficult to use, but we have a CUNY map which works much better, and it'll show you what the situation is now live. It's updated every day at 2 p.m. What the response rate is for our respective neighborhoods. So if we put in Fifth Avenue Synagogue, we'll just see for a second what that census tract looks like. Excuse me. Easy, it uses Google data. So you can see here, it's dark orange, dark red. The self-response rate is 19.6%. That is really, really bad, especially if you look at other parts of the city, the Upper West Side, Lode, where this neighborhood responded 60%, 64%. So when you have here, now I know it's a commercial district, there's businesses, whatever, but when 2 or 3 households, and it's not as homogeneous as Williamsburg or Borough Park, but when 2 or 3 households don't respond, it really skews our data. So you see here that a lot of people did not respond. We will have to have enumerators go door to door, and the supers will try to keep us out, and the supers are the people we could find, because once the super doesn't let our enumerators into the building by law, they have to, we can ask the super about those tenants, the information we would rather ask the tenants, and if they don't respond, we can find them. So no one wants a situation. People think they're superior to the census. It's above them. They don't need to take it. They live in China 4 months out of the year. If you live full-time in Manhattan, here, anywhere in the United States, you answer the census where you would have been full-time, Corona notwithstanding. So that's one of the harder messages we need to bring forth. I want to show you very briefly Williamsburg. This is not Williamsburg, Virginia, excuse me. Williamsburg, Brooklyn. So if any of you can guess which are the Yiddish neighborhoods, the Jewish neighborhoods, it's these right here, this triangle. It's gotten much better. These two neighborhoods are also very Yiddishlach, but they responded better. Not great, but better. So you see here 41%. Now, what's the difference between this neighborhood and the Upper East Side? This neighborhood, you see most people responded by mail because they're not internet proficient. They don't have those resources. They don't know how to use the internet. They don't know how to even, they don't even know that they can, if they could dial even, they might not be able to. Their English is so bad, they can't do it. They don't understand how to do it. They think it has something to do with voting. They say, I registered already. But you see here, the response, it's below 40%. In Borough Park, what everyone knows this address, what's the most well-known address in Crown Heights? It's 770. Where do the Jews live on Eastern Parkway? They live here. This is actually an improvement. This was orange, everything else was yellow, but it's still not great. It's 43%. We expect, Corona notwithstanding, that 70% of people respond to the census by themselves, and the last 30% we have to send enumerators. But if this is what the response rate is going to be now, we'll go to Borough Park, you'll see the same thing. You can expect that the response rate is going to not exceed 70%, and that means that 30% of the gelt that was supposed to go to that community is not getting there. So hopefully I'm doing okay on time. I want to show you KJ had one exception. KJ is a little more organized. The government there is very centralized. It's now called Palm Tree. They're doing different outreach initiatives, but even though they're below the self-response rate, and mind you, this is the fastest growing natural population in the United States, even though they're below the regular response rate, they're still above their 2010 response rate by 4.5 points. So they have grown exponentially. They could have quadrupled in the last 10 years. But unless we're fully counted, we're not going to be able to have the funds that we need for all the government services that we want and the representation that we need. So back to the presentation. I'll try to wrap it up by 8:15, maybe 8:10.
Sam, one more.
Yeah.
Sam, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You know, this is all great for all the communities in the outer boroughs, but how is people responding on the Upper East Side going to help their community around them, community-wise and Jewish-wise?
Community-wise, the more the response rate, the higher the response rate, the more funds that are going to be allocated to that community, to that census tract. Your politicians, your assemblymen, your councilmen, your state senator, they all have an interest in having you respond, because the gelt is going to be funneling to your community. And if it's not, you don't want to have to rely on private benefactors to fund street signs, to fund roads, to fund municipal programs. The government should really cover that. And we could, and if we have a 100% response rate, if you live in a building that's majority Goyish, ask your super, leave something in the mailroom. Tell them it's very important. It must be done. So I'm just trying to, I'm sorry, go back to this presentation. Moving forward, everyone sees this. This, by the way, I did this translation. We didn't have anything in Yiddish, so I myself had to do a couple translations. This is a recruiting event by UJO. It was done in Williamsburg, and we had people crowd our table to sign up. They went to this event. They all want to be supervisors, and unfortunately, only maybe 2 or 3 people are going to be supervisors. So it wasn't really successful. Again, my Yiddish recruiting assistant, and it was very important for me to have him in the community so they understood he's an echte Yid. He grew up in Williamsburg, but he's not from. He was a former ambassador to Peru. So I brought him to a wedding, and that's the video. You don't have to watch the video, but they danced. I got him in. I made sure that he was there. This is Kofal of Kislev. The Satmars, they celebrate the day that the Rebbe arrived in Switzerland on the Kastner train. It was important for me to be there to show them that I'm not some ployne ben ployne, that I'm somebody in the community, that I'm someone they can trust. And very unexpectedly, they pulled me onto the stage as I'm leaving, with the politicians, with the government representatives, and they had me meet the Rabbi Zalman, the Satmar Rebbe, and this was seen by 40,000 people. And it was reported on in the Yid, the Blatt. And it's significant because it really made my job a lot easier going to communities. They heard of me, they know who I am. And I went to Iguda Rabbanim. They said, I saw you at Kofal Kislev. It was a very significant event, and I was very surprised to have that happen. Here are 2 ads. So here are 2 ads from UJL Williamsburg. They made this themselves, 10 minutes for 10 years. This was 3 months in advance. They said in less than 3 months, we're going to do the census. What is it? Why it's important? They showed the map, how poorly they responded. This is actually from last week. This appeared in their newspaper. So they said only 33.3% responded, and the entire New York City response rate is 55.5%. So they're not even at the level that they have to be. These are holiday-based census announcements. This one's from Borough Park JCC. It's in Yiddish, and then the other one is from Yeshiva Flatbush and 2 other schools. They were counting the Omer. So they said, if you're counting yourself for the Omer, count yourself in the census. So I thought that was a very unique, original. It was a good opportunity to promote the census. This was a huge event. Borough Park JCC did a drive-through. It also coincided with the 4th mailing. So they had people come. They commissioned a census song. If you want to listen to a piece of it here. So they made a song. It doesn't really make sense to go to the census, but that's how they made the song. They understand that, like voting, you have to register. A lot of these organizations, they don't want people to respond to the census directly. They want to funnel the participants through their organization, which legally they really shouldn't be doing. But we've been very lenient in this regard. They commissioned this. This is a former blood mobile. They made it into a census mobile with UJO. And they went around Borough Park. You can see the video here. So they had a drive-through event. They had a Haredim, Hasidim with iPads doing the census. It was a huge event. It had an amazing impact. It was a huge response bump. It was actually the highest single-day response bump in the entire 8 states and Puerto Rico thus far. So it was very significant. Posting in WhatsApp groups, it's been very important, especially with Corona. This has been very important. So this is interesting. I did a survey in in Hamish Kreml. It's a Yiddish Telegram group. Have you filled out the census already? 31% said yes, 32% said no, and 37% said I've never heard of the census before. And then after that, this guy didn't even understand what is this person saying? What is the census? So it shows you what the challenges have been doing the census. This has been on Kavi Stiebel. It's blogs on the internet where the Yidden are, where the Yiddish speaking Yidden are. We have to be. This is a post that we did. This is from Muncie. They tied it to healthcare. They tied it to Corona healthcare issues. So however much money the community needs for healthcare, this is how you get it. So that's the majority. I'll show you a few more items. I don't want to take up too much more time. But I want to show you very briefly. This is from Muncie. This is the COC in Muncie created this document. It's 8 pages, and it's just all the reasons why the census is important. They could have translated our documents. They made new documents. Some of the information is not legally. They shouldn't be able to print it, but it's in Yiddish. No one knows. For example, they said that we made a law that allows private. Again, this is the steg or the trend. These organizations want to funnel the participants through them because they get money from the state, they're getting money from the city to do outreach activities, and they put quotas on them, and so therefore they're trying to, it makes a mixshul, another stumbling block, but they do this to get people to respond. Then we have here, I think this is the last thing I'll share. This was a poster that I had to translate, a flyer I had to translate into Yiddish because we had no Yiddish language materials whatsoever. What's the problem? They discontinued this in English right after I translated it, and there's no call to action. So it doesn't say go online, go over the phone and do the census. So that was one of the challenges. And we have a Yiddish language website I'll pull up right now. And you'll see immediately, besides the fact that most of these Yiddish speakers don't have internet access, they have filters on their internet. They can't access regular websites. But there's this woman, this has nothing to do with, it's just a stock photo. It's not a Google Translate, it's a real translation. But they don't know how to reach, even though they can translate it more or less correctly. It's a little strange for Hasidic Yiddish speakers. They have no chush, they have no sense of what we need for this community, how to reach them. So I have to get creative when reaching out. I'll go to Shachris, but even with Corona, I can do this now again. I'll bring my recruiting assistant who you saw, and we'll say we'll do an announcement after Minyan. If you didn't do the census, do it with us, do it by yourself. Here's a flyer. We have swag. We were giving away a lot of promotional material, as you saw from Sima Shas. So we're doing all these activities, and hopefully Mirz Hashem will be successful in getting everyone to respond. So I'm going to stop the share. So that more or less concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now. And thank you for being patient. 21 participants, not bad. We did very well. So thank you again for allowing me to speak to your shul.
Sammy, thank you so much. It's very interesting to hear your discussion about the census, and we're so grateful for the work that you're doing and participating in the Zoom tonight. Asher, thank you also for joining from Florida. It's so nice to look at that palm tree in the background. I hope you're enjoying some balmy weather there. Very nice to have you on. So a number of questions did come in through the chat, and then I have a few as well, and very much appreciate your willingness to answer them. So the first question I was curious about is, to what extent will coronavirus limit the ability of census takers to gather information, and how is this being accommodated this year?
So the way it works is that we abide by state guidelines, by city guidelines. So if the city is, for example, we're in phase 2, we're not even permitted now to go out and do outbound activities, events. So we're waiting till the 13th to go out. In more remote places like Alaska, New Hampshire, they're already going out. They're doing, they're leaving placards on doors to get people to respond. But our CRRs, David Balchaim Ovitz, who you saw from Sima Shas, they're hourly employees. So they really rely on events that I do, that my colleagues do to have work. And they're trying to get creative now. They're trying to have them call organizations to get the message out, to get them to do stuff. But we expect by October to already be knocking on doors. They send us all PPE, PPG, protective gear, face masks, hand sanitizer, which we do have to wear when we go out and ask questions. We stay 6 feet away. No one touches our iPads. That's for us alone. That's for the enumerators alone. So it's going to be very socially distanced, very safe. We're already transitioning now back to not the status quo, but to something that's functional, that's effective in getting the message out.
Good. We'll continue to be safe. Yeah, that's very helpful. And when do the results come out?
The results, great question. They come out exactly 1 year. Well, that's the thing, 1 year from April of 2020. So April 1st is Census Day. By April 1st, 2021, the president, regardless of who they are, is going to receive the results, and then the results are made public 2 or 3 months later. Now that timeline hasn't changed. The president is still expected to receive the results by April 1st, 2021. They're going to be published by 3 or 4 months later. And they will be available for the public. Again, personal information is not shared, only by tract. And we use differential privacy and jittering to obscure any personal information.
Question for you, Sam. How does this affect voting as far as congressmen, senators, I wouldn't say senators, but more like congressmen in the United States based on population and districts?
So senators, you know, there's always going to be 2 senators per state, but congressmen is based on population, and that is directly by the census. So New York is projected to lose 1 seat, maybe 2, depending on what the response rate is. Texas is going to gain a seat projected. Florida is going to gain a seat. So it's representation, really for the Jewish, since the Jewish community is concentrated in the tri-state area and people are fleeing the tri-state area, the Midwest is growing the fastest. Jews as a community are going to have less representation. And the state as a whole is going to have, by virtue of the state losing representation, the Jewish community is also going to lose representation. So even though we as a community may be growing, just by virtue of there being less people in these states in the tri-state area, we're going to ultimately suffer from these results.
Sam, one of the questions that came in from our congregants was, are you aware and how do you deal with paranoia in the Hasidic community?
I haven't really experienced, the paranoia is who are you, what do you want? So I'll tell you, I'll call Stolen Karliner, even though I have an in, like what does the yeshiva have to do with the census? So if you know somebody, if I'm working, like I said, with the politicians, with the community outreach leaders, like New Square, for example, it's during Corona. I call it a base medrash, and I explain to them what I'm doing. And I say, you better speak to the city council first before you come to us, because like they're so centralized, they have muda, they have trepidation to do any, just to have me make an announcement, because it's going against maybe Satmar, it's going against maybe what their Bells, by the way, also got money from the Complete Count Fund. Did they do any work with it? I can't say. The way this grant was set up was they don't get the money until they spend the money, which I think is pretty clever. But at the same time, many organizations, Jewish organizations who receive money, such as the COC in Muncie, have chosen not to work with us, even though we're free labor and we're free materials and free swag, which has been a huge draw, especially in Borough Park, for that drive-through to get people. I think I went on tangent, but so paranoia, it's not what you would expect. Who is this guy? Why does he speak Yiddish? That's like the biggest question. How do you know Yiddish? Why do you speak Yiddish? Your Yiddish is not like our Yiddish. It's better you speak to us in English. So, it's fine. I don't mind. If you speak Yinglish, that works too. And so I'm never gonna be Satmar or whatever, but for them it's good enough. You wear the sama to the kippah. You have the tzitzis behind the noise, except by Novo Minsk, where the tzitzis hang on, it's fine. So.
Right. Another question that came in from our congregation is whether you work at all with the Orthodox Union.
So Orthodox Union, I met with Alicia Penn very early. And we had a meeting in person, and I had another meeting with a representative there. But they weren't so interested in working with us. I don't think it's part of their mission statement. But also the modern Orthodox, which the OU represents, they're not really, especially before Corona, it wasn't a population that we expected to not respond. It's really the Haredi, be it Litvish, Hasidish. They're the ones who are really not responding. And Borough Park really showed, because Borough Park is both. You have the whole spectrum of Yiddishkeit there. Midwood is a little more, it's Syrian, it's a little more modern. Midwood's responded well. They're responding well. It's still not, we want 100% B'Shlemus, but we're not there yet. But, so
right.
The focus for me, like RCA, I also had the opportunity to go to the RCA, and, I needed 4 meetings a week every week until Corona hit. So again, it's more to focus on the organizations that, one, they'll do something, and two, to have exposure. So I'll crash a minion. No one's going to kick me out of shul if I'm davening with my tefillin, and then make an announcement after davening. They have people, and when I go to stores also, I say, you have a pushka there. People need jobs here. We're paying it's now $28.50 an hour. We're paying a lot of money for work for Hamish, for Hamish people. Put this next to your pushka and let people take a flyer, So that's really the angle. If you're letting people schnur here, for people's parnosa, this is my parnosa, and this is for the benefit of the community. Now, some organizations are very lahaches. They only want to do work unless they get paid to do the work. So especially the Instagram, I'm not going to try and rechilas about anybody, individuals, but there's a mentality, why should I do work? Why should I work for free? And not that my community needs the money for the next 10 years. I need to do this for my community. It's public service. It's a civic obligation. That's been a michshul. That's been English. That's been a stumbling block.
Right. Now, one of the doctors in our congregation always shares some funny anecdotes that when he tries to take a family history and ask in the religious neighborhoods how many kids are in a family, they don't want to answer. Or they might say not, they'll count not 1, not 2, not 3. A lot of religious Jews have superstitions about counting. Do you encounter any of that issue where they don't want to count the children or grandchildren that are in a household?
So it came up with the Aguda very early for people like that, but I personally never encountered it. I know that when I did research, like for Israel statistics, I try to, maybe I shouldn't have done it. I try to contact the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, let them get it. They want to be involved in diaspora. This is a perfect way to get involved in diaspora, but it hasn't really occurred the way people thought it would. So it's a non-issue, I would say.
Okay. Another question that came up was whether other countries take a census, and if any of those countries operate similarly to ours, if they use different methods.
So I can't speak too specifically to that because I work for the United States Census Bureau. I know Canada does their survey every 5 years in years starting in one. The decennial, Israel has a Ministry of Statistics that, they're doing censuses. Demographic information is very important worldwide. We're not the only country to do the census, but we've been doing it. We've been doing it the longest. So
Yeah. Do you anticipate any big surprises when the results come out?
the coronavirus has been the biggest surprise, I have
Yeah.
to say. We're trying our best. We didn't expect to be working this long. This is a mixed tour. We expect to do this for a year and then go on to our next job. But we're still here. I might be here till October.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're
So
trying our
many
best.
unknowns, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is just a shot in the dark kind of question, but what would you expect to see in 10 years, just you personally?
10 years, I would like the Jewish community to be more, they're going to forget. You have people now who are 9 years old. In 10 years from now, they're going to be married with children, and they're not going to know, they have no chush from that's what we have now. So that's really going to be the challenge. I really would like to see organizations, shuls get involved without financial compensation and financial incentive to do so, because there really is a financial benefit 10 years, down the line. If it's 2026 and people are complaining, our sidewalks are cracked, there's no health, there's bad hospitals. This is why you didn't participate like you should have.
Right, they need to take some responsibility and answer.
Demographics that need these benefits the most are not going to get them because they didn't participate. That's
one of our members asked if somebody needs assistance in filling out their paperwork, are you or is anyone else able to help?
So our CRRs could help. We have a hotline. I'm going to say the phone number again. If you cannot fill it out on your own online, it's 844, and it's in the chat box, 844-330-2020. Again, 844-330-2020. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good to know. So we would also like to advertise the information in our bulletin. Is there any reason that we couldn't include it in our?
Absolutely. I can share with you all. It's very generic material, but we have it. I'm more than happy to share. It's available online as well. And you're more than, I would actively encourage you to get it into your
Okay,
bulletin.
wonderful. We need to get those numbers up in the 10065 zip code.
Of course. And if this doctor in your congregation would like to do a separate webinar that we're conducting with Aaron Glatt and other doctors, Schollenberger, to talk about the census and the importance of healthcare, I would welcome that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, this was just terrific. The recording will be on our website following the presentation. It'll be up in about a day or two, so people can certainly refer to that if they need more information or if they want to go back to get that phone number for assistance. But I can't thank you enough for sharing this very interesting information with us and emphasizing how important it is that our members and members of the Jewish community more broadly participate. So thank you again for your time. And I'll turn it back over to the rabbi to close.
And please be counted. Please do your census. That's my last.
Thank you so much. Thank
Sam,
you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Is the Upper East Side statistically as has the same statistics as other religious neighborhoods, regardless of the religious
it's
people
more
in the neighborhood?
comparable. It's not so, it's not as ethnically homogenous, the Upper East Side, as other neighborhoods. I would say it's more like, it shouldn't be that the affluent neighborhood and the poor neighborhood have the same self-response rate. So it's like it's closer to what you'd see in Bed-Stuy than what you should see on the Upper East Side. So it's very important to respond.
Sam, thank you so much for your presentation. I think we all learned something this evening and have a new appreciation of the significance of it. Just one quick question for you. I know from a Jewish perspective, I think a lot of us, when we receive the census, are confused because if you ask us to identify ourselves, we say we're Jewish. But on the checklist, there's really no option to check it off because, as you said, it goes by race and then ethnicity you have to put in yourself. So why isn't the census a little bit more detailed where you could actually just like check off what you are? Because I know when I got the census, I really wasn't sure, Caucasian, Polish, Russian, Jewish, I wasn't really sure what to fill out. And not everyone has the privilege of hearing you speak before they fill it out.
So it's interesting, a lot of Jews, like to identify as, I mean, historically, since the 50s, we've been identifying as white. Now it's not so beneficial to identify as white. That's for race. There was also, they were supposed to add MENA, which is Middle Eastern, North African. There's a lot of Jews. Well, I'm from the Levant. Israel's in the Levant. That's my indigenous place. I want to do that. So now white still encompasses MENA, which a lot of even the Arabs also don't like. But I would say to you, you would check which box you most closely identify with. And again, this year is unique in that race and ethnicity are different. So we on the census, we have to consider ourselves Jews as an ethnicity, an ethno-religious group, rather than it's a very American thing to think of a Judaism as a religion rather than a nation, as a peoplehood. So that's for that reason I would say put Jewish question 9 after you specify your race. And it's totally optional, but I know that we as census employees can't say how other agencies will use our data, but I'd be very hard pressed to see that the Homeland Security and other federal agencies aren't going to look at ethnic data and say money shouldn't go here. So I think it's very important that we respond this way.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you, Usher, for arranging it and for your kindness to the shul. Please God, everyone should be healthy and safe and have an enjoyable summer. And we look forward to really gathering together in person and to counting you in person in the shul for minyan. That's also an important census. We do that. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and we hope to see you next Sunday night.